Thanks so much for coming. It's great to be here in Hawke's Bay with Katie and Catherine, local MPs, to be able to talk and meet earlier with the local mayors just in regards to Budget 2024, which invests significantly in the cyclone recovery. There's a full $600 million for the full recovery of the state highway network. There's $330 million for the next stage of the local roading recovery work, which is led by the councils. The government's committed to the recovery of our local roading networks. We understand how important it is to this region post-cyclone Gabrielle last year, and it's really important we have really close alignment between the MPs, government and the mayors as well around as we get on and get that done and restore that confidence in our roading network here in this community so we can get people where they need to go quickly and safely and also get those exports to the ports because this is the fruit bowl of New Zealand. But happy to take any questions.
Were you on the same page as the mayors?
Absolutely. I think there's really good alignment between the mayors and government. We're both working really closely together to make sure that we've got that recovery program in place. In particular, we've got the state highway funding, we've got the local road recovery, which they're leading. And we just want to make sure that we're working together for this region, which is a really important region in this country. And the local MPs, Katie and Catherine, have also been really strong advocates for this region down in Wellington.
Yeah. So who were the mayors? Was it all the mayors and the regional chair as well?
We had the mayor of Wairoa, Napier, Hawke's Bay, Hastings, and we had Alex from Central Hawke's Bay here today.
And not the regional chair, though?
Not the regional chair, but we had all the mayors,
okay.
Yes, for the region, yes. Yeah.
And what were the concerns that they raised? Did they raise any concerns with you?
I mean, ultimately, I think the key thing is they want to see things just getting on and get things done. I think that's the next. Ultimately, what the council and the mayors are saying is we want to see progress. Look, there has been some concerns raised around Trek. We had a really good conversation around how they're operating. There's clearly a need for better communication between Trek, the local mayors, the local MPs and the community, which we've talked about. And we're going to take steps to make sure that that is happening in a much more open and transparent manner. But ultimately, my message is I want to see delivery. It's time we just get on and get things done. The budget provides clarity, it provides certainty around funding, and now it's about getting delivery done so that we have more confidence on those road networks, people can get where they need to go quickly and safely.
Craig, in particular, is quite strong on the Napier-Wairoa Road.
Yes.
What assurances and promises did you give him about that?
Yeah, so the funding is for the full recovery of the state highway. There is also, and I know the regional land transport plan includes the proposition of doing the new Waikere Gorge realignment. So that's going to go through the National Land Transport Program, which is going to be set by August, September. So that's being discussed in the NZTA. We're looking at whether or not that should get additional funding to get that sorted. So there's more steps that need to be done on that particular project. But ultimately the funding that's been allocated by the government will deliver full recovery of the state highway between Napier and Wairoa.
What other roads were raised as issues that needed to be looked at?
Well, I think that's the key road that we did have further conversations about. Ultimately, the funding that's been provided, the $609 million for the state highways, is for the full recovery of the state highway network back to what it was prior to the cyclone. There's obviously an opportunity there around the Waikere Gorge, which is actively being looked at through the National Land Transport Program process.
And these two's favourite one, the expressway?
Yeah, absolutely. So we discussed the expressway as well. We've prioritised that in the government policy statement as one of our roads of national significance. And so that's also being, the decisions on that will be made as part of the National Land Transport Program, which will be determined by August, September. From our perspective, it's one of the top priorities within that Roads of National Significance program. Yeah. And so there's a lot of work. The agency's already started work looking at the designation, looking at how it could be staged, looking at what could be done to get that project underway as quickly as possible. So more will be confirmed August, September, but from our perspective, it's a key priority for this region, and we're committed to it.
So realistically, when can we expect to be driving on it?
Well, those decisions will be confirmed as part of the National Land Transport program. But look, it's been something that's been talked about for a long time. My view is we need to. There hasn't been a lot of work done in the last 6 years because the last government cancelled the roads of national significance. So the work that's being done now is looking at the designation, the scope, what's needed, how it can be staged. Those are really key decisions so that when more is announced, we've got the clarity that's the community's asking for. And that's what I'm concerned. I'm not going to go out there and promise something when we don't have that clarity. But we've, as we said, committed to the project. It's a top priority for the government.
And now the Regional Recovery Agency, Hawke's Bay Recovery
Yes.
Agency, were at the meeting
Yes.
as well. What did they want from you? What did they say to you?
Well, ultimately, we were discussing a number of issues, obviously roading, water. The opportunity there was just making sure there's really good alignment between central government and local government on the issues that are affecting this region. And look, there's a lot of great things happening in this region. There's a lot of challenges, a lot of opportunities, and we were just working, they're obviously a really critical component, particularly around the next steps with local water done well. And so that was one of the topics we also discussed, is how do we work together to ensure that this region can set up, be ready for local water done well, which is about ensuring we have that long-term investment in the water infrastructure that's critical to unlocking economic growth and opportunity in this region as well.
And one of the things that has been mentioned, I don't know if Sandra mentioned it to you, was the Napier-Taihape Road. There have been calls to make that part of the state highway network. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, that didn't come up in the conversation specifically today, but ultimately what we have funded today is the full recovery of the state highway network. There's obviously the National Land Transport Program, which is being developed by the New Zealand Transport Agency, and councils will be providing their priorities into that as part of the regional land transport plans, and the NZTA board will have to consider all of those different opportunities as setting that plan.
Going forward in government is looking at some of these different kind of roads that are under council jurisdictions. Is that something that you guys possibly end up looking at?
Well, ultimately those decisions have to be made by the NZTA board as part of the NLTP. Ultimately, one of my jobs as the Minister of Transport is make sure that the agency has the resources so that it's able to help support the maintenance and improvements of our roading network. That's its core job. It has the scope to make those decisions within that, but we have to make sure it has a sustainable funding model to help deliver, so they can actually make those choices.
What do the two of you have to say about the meeting and what you see as priorities for the Minister?
Oh, I think it's great that we've got the Minister here very soon after the budget has been announced, focusing on Hawke's Bay and the cyclone recovery, which is really important, and ensuring that we get our infrastructure and roading network back up and running so that we can drive more efficiency and more productivity in the region, because of course Hawke's Bay is a food producing region, and you know we've got a lot of produce that needs to get to the port, and we've also got a lot of people that want to get around, and a lot of rural communities that are still struggling. And so to see our Minister here today meeting with regional leaders and looking at the plan ahead is really, really positive for the region.
And to add to that, I think the most important thing is that everyone's working really well together. So to have our council, around the table, these road controlling authorities who all want the same thing. They want to see Hawke's Bay built, back to what it was, so that we can get on and grow our economy and get things moving. And so to have everybody united around the table was fantastic. And the voices that we're hearing when we're out and about in our communities, that was what was reflected in the meeting this morning. So, it's great we can talk to Simeon and tell him what's happening, and then he comes here and hears that from the horse's mouth. So, we're all aligned.
You mentioned Trek and some unhappiness there in communication. In particular, what is that coming from Craig in particular?
Oh, look, I think it's something that's been raised by the local MPs as well as local mayors. Ultimately, they're a delivery entity. Their job is to get things done. And I want to make sure that's what they're doing, and that they're also communicating really well with local leaders in the community about what's happening, when it's happening, so there's a real clarity around the role that they have to play in this region. So my view is, and the conversation we're having today, is making sure that there's really good relationships between Trek and local leadership and local the MPs and councils, so they know that they're getting value for money from this alliance, and that it's delivering for the local community.
And speed limits. Do you think we'll see an increase in speed limits anytime soon on the Napier-Taihape?
Well, we have obviously got a commitment to put in place a new setting of speed limits rule, and we are soon to have more to say on that.
Oh, good. And another one to do with, we go back to the Waikiri Gorge. There was speak of putting in a temporary culvert there. I don't know if you've heard about that, at the Devil's Elbow.
Right.
Have you heard much about that?
Well, this will fund, the funding that we've announced today will fund the full recovery of the Devil's Elbow as part of the funding allocation. Absolutely. Yep.
Is another road an alternative? Another road not including Devil's Elbow in that?
So that's something that's been looked at, but ultimately this funds the recovery of the Devil's Elbow. I think that the key priority which has come through from the mayors and from the regional leadership is the Waikiri Gorge is the priority in terms of if there was to be further investment at a realignment, that would be the top priority. And that's what's going to be considered as part of the National Land Transport Program.
Have you driven that road?
I have.
It's terrible, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, I've driven it a couple of times since I became minister. Absolutely.
And did you talk a lot about ratepayers and the ratepayers in
Yes.
Bay,
Yes.
in that meeting, and what did you kind of have to? What was the feedback in that?
I mean, ultimately, like all councils across New Zealand, they're facing significant cost pressures, and so we acknowledge that. Ultimately, this funding is about supporting these councils to be able to deliver the local road recovery. This provides substantial funding to those councils to be able to continue with that really, really important work. So the government is doing its bit to support those councils, but we also acknowledge the tough decisions that they're making. It's not easy. They're facing significant cost pressures. That's why local water done well is a really important part of that puzzle as well, because we want to support councils to be able to have a much more financially sustainable approach to investing in water infrastructure by spreading those costs over time and having access to long-term funding and financing. That's what local water has done well is all about, and so that's why that conversation is really important here in the Hawke's Bay as well.